Jake tossed the heavy quilt onto the floor, his body rejecting the heat of the restless night. Outside, his bedroom window rattled violently as a siren wailed past the apartment building. Tires hissed against the rain-slicked pavement of Chicago, and the relentless wind slammed against the glass pane. Jake pressed his palms into his eyes until he saw spots, but his heart kept racing with the frantic, jagged rhythm of the city. He sat up, his shadow stretching across the wall as streetlights flickered. Leaning his forehead against the cold glass, he watched the yellow traffic crawl like ants. "I need a quiet place," he whispered. Suddenly, a low, rhythmic vibration hummed through the floorboards, growing into a deep, metallic moan. A train whistle cut through the roar, sharp and crystal clear. The lights dimmed and vanished as the walls began to blur, stretching into long, dark ribbons of shadow. The floor beneath his feet softened, turning into damp, sweet-smelling grass. The city noise faded, replaced by the gentle rustle of leaves. Jake blinked, his breath slowing at last. As the bedroom ceiling dissolved completely into an endless, star-filled sky, he was finally home. Jake lay in his Chicago apartment, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. The city hummed with distant life, but inside these four walls, the room was heavy with silence. He was alone with his thoughts in the dead of night. At 2 a.m., a sharp, metallic whistle pierced the air. It was not the low rumble of the subway, but something high-pitched, echoing from above. Jake bolted upright, his feet hitting the cold floor as the streetlights below began to flicker and fade. He pushed the window open. A trail of white smoke cut through the clouds, glowing silver under the moonlight. A massive steam train, its wheels spinning in empty space, glided between the skyscrapers. It moved without tracks, haunting and rhythmic. Jake gripped the window frame, his knuckles turning white as the train slowed. There, on the rear platform, stood a conductor in a dark coat. He held a flickering lantern high. The conductor turned his head, locking eyes with Jake in a moment that felt like an eternity. With a final booming whistle, the train accelerated, vanishing into the thick clouds. Jake remained at the window, his breath visible in the sudden, biting chill. The sky was empty once more, leaving only the silence of Chicago behind him. Jake pressed his palms against the cold window glass. A sharp, rhythmic whistle pierced the silence, vibrating deep through his chest. Below, the Chicago streets lay abandoned. Streetlights flickered, casting long, erratic shadows across the empty pavement. Nothing moved, yet the air felt heavy with a coming storm. Suddenly, the air began to hum. A jagged line of blue light tore through the night sky, widening into a glowing aperture. A massive shape materialized, translucent and shimmering like moonlight on water. It was a train, drifting silently, hovering just inches above the cold asphalt of the intersection. The engine stopped directly before Jake's window. A door hissed open, spilling a soft, golden radiance into his dim room. The interior was still, filled with a gentle, inviting warmth that promised peace. Jake stepped back, his breath hitching. He looked at his locked apartment, a cage of his own making, then back at the door. He reached out, his hand hovering over the latch in the freezing air. The whistle sounded again, lower and more insistent this time. It was a call he could no longer ignore. Jake climbed onto the sill and jumped, his feet landing silently on the train floor. The door sealed shut. With a sudden surge, the train vanished into the dark, leaving the city lights far below. Jake stepped into the glowing train, the doors hissing shut with a finality that left the world behind. He stood in the silent aisle, gripping his jacket tight. Above him, soft blue lights pulsed along the ceiling like distant, rhythmic stars. His sneakers made no sound on the plush carpet. Suddenly, a small teddy bear on the third seat tilted its head with a mechanical click. It tapped the velvet cushion beside it, inviting him closer. Jake froze, his hand hovering over the seat back as his heart hammered against his ribs. The silence was broken by a voice, crisp and clear. "Welcome, Jake," the bear said. Jake pulled his hand back, his chest rising and falling rapidly. "You can talk," he whispered. The bear nodded once, its button eyes fixed on him with kindness. "I am your dream guide. You are safe here." Jake took a shaky breath, finally letting the tension melt away as he sat down. The bear gestured toward the window. "This train only arrives for children who cannot sleep." Outside, the Chicago skyline blurred into streaks of orange and white. The city lights sank away as the train tilted upward, gliding into dark clouds and leaving the earth far below. Jake watched the stars drift past. The dream train cut through the dark clouds, its silver wheels humming against the velvet night. Jake pressed his palm against the cold glass, watching stars blur into long streaks of light. Beside him, the teddy bear adjusted its bow tie and let out a soft, rhythmic clicking sound. The train shuddered, its metallic groan fading into a whisper as it pulled into a station suspended in midair. The teddy bear tapped Jake on the knee. "Jake, we have arrived." Jake stepped onto the platform, feeling the floor of polished starlight beneath his feet. A golden lantern hung from the rafters, casting a steady, warm glow that erased every shadow. The silence was thick, like a heavy blanket. Jake took a step forward, his shoes silent on the glowing floor. He reached out to touch a wooden bench, and the wood hummed with a gentle vibration. Suddenly, the tightness in his chest simply evaporated. The teddy bear hopped down beside him and whispered, "This is the calm station. Leave your worries here." Jake leaned against the bench as his eyelids grew heavy. The noise of the world fell away, leaving only the soft glow of the station and the steady, quiet rhythm of his own pulse. When Jake opened his eyes, the metal walls of the calm station were gone. He was no longer on a cold train floor. Instead, he was drifting miles above the earth. Below him, the entire city of Chicago floated in the midnight air, silent and vast. The skyscrapers did not stand still. They drifted like massive ships on a slow-moving tide. Each building pulsed with a soft blue light, while thousands of cars darted between the towers, leaving trails of gold light like falling stars. Jake pressed his palms against the cold glass of the window. He stared at the horizon where clouds glowed like embers. "This is impossible," he whispered. Beside him, the teddy bear sat upright. The toy turned its head, its stitched mouth curving into a wide grin. "In dreams, nothing is impossible," the bear replied with a chilling softness. Jake gripped his seat as the train lurched forward, gliding into the vast, glowing expanse of the sky. The city below shrunk to the size of a toy, its streets merging into a shimmering river. He did not pull away as they cut through the clouds toward the edge of the world. The dream train screeched to a sudden halt, then lurched forward into a vast, silent canyon. Jake pressed his face against the cold glass, peering down. Below the tracks, a massive river cut through the darkness. It was not water, but thick, glowing ribbons of golden light. The teddy bear sat on the opposite seat, its button eyes fixed on the display. It pointed a stiff, stitched arm toward the window. "This is the river of soft light. It washes away stress," the bear stated. Jake leaned further, his nose touching the pane as the light pulsed. He watched a swirl of luminescence break away and drift upward like mist. Jake reached out, his fingers brushing the glass. The air inside the carriage grew heavy and warm, smelling of ancient dreams. His eyelids fluttered, then drooped. He tried to blink, but his muscles refused to obey. He slumped back into the velvet seat, his grip on the window frame loosening. "It feels so calm," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the train. The locomotive surged ahead, floating above the radiant flow. Jake's head tilted back. The tension in his shoulders vanished, and he drifted into a deep, silent slumber. The dream train hissed to a halt, its heavy iron wheels sinking into a soft carpet of glowing moss. Jake stepped onto the platform, his boots making no sound against the earth. Before him, the sleep mist forest stretched endlessly, wrapped in a thick, pearly haze. A small teddy bear tugged at Jake's sleeve, pointing toward a path lined with luminescent flowers. As Jake took a step, the mist drifted against his skin, cooling his forehead and slowing his pulse. He touched a branch, but his fingers passed through the leaves like smoke. Behind him, the train doors clicked shut, vanishing into the fog. Jake walked deeper, his heavy winter coat feeling as weightless as a silk ribbon. Each breath he took pulled in the scent of damp earth and crushed starlight. He stumbled slightly, his knees bending of their own accord. With a soft thud, he sank into a bed of ferns that shaped themselves to his back like a warm, living cradle. The forest floor hummed, a low vibration that muted his thoughts. His eyelids grew heavy, dragging down until they stayed closed. Silence swallowed the last flicker of his awareness. The forest stood watch, its silver branches swaying in perfect rhythmic stillness. Jake stepped into the thick, swirling mist of the forest. The air hung heavy and cold against his skin. He froze as his boots sank into the damp moss, feeling the silence of the woods. High above, a branch creaked. A glowing owl descended, its feathers shimmering with a pulsing light. It landed right before him. Beside him, his teddy bear whispered, "This is your night teacher." The owl's eyes fixed steadily on Jake. The owl's voice was like rolling thunder. To silence the restless mind, you must master the rhythm of the air, it commanded. Inhale slowly, hold, then exhale slowly. Jake mirrored the movement, drawing a breath and releasing it. His chest rose and fell in time with the bird's gaze. The rapid thumping in his heart slowed to a gentle, rhythmic pulse. The owl gave a slow nod. "You are learning the language of sleep," it hooted. Jake lowered himself onto the earth, drifting into the quiet, dark embrace of the night. The dream train left the forest behind, accelerating into the deep night sky. Jake pressed his forehead against the cold glass, watching the velvet darkness rush past him like a silent, rushing river of ink. Suddenly, a blinding shimmer cut through the blackness ahead. Jake stood up quickly, his fingers gripping the cold brass handrail as a massive bridge emerged from the void, constructed entirely from tightly packed, glowing stars. The tracks hummed as the metal wheels gripped the starlight. Beside him, the teddy bear pointed a furry paw toward the horizon and whispered, "We are crossing the Star Bridge." The train chugged forward, its lights dimming to match the soft, rhythmic pulse of the galaxy. Outside, the engine wheels crunched against the solid light. Jake leaned out the window, his hand brushing against floating golden dust. Below, an endless expanse of space stretched out, filled with flickering constellations that danced in the silence. Jake sat back down, his fingers finally relaxing. The rhythmic clatter of the tracks slowed into a gentle, soothing lullaby. His eyelids grew heavy, dropping lower with every passing second. As the train reached the bridge's center, Jake drifted into a deep, silent sleep. The dream train hissed to a gentle stop, its silver wheels locking into a platform crafted from pure starlight. Jake stepped out onto the glowing carnival grounds. His heavy boots made no sound against the soft velvet floor. Above him, the sky pulsed with a rhythmic violet light, casting long shadows across the silent rows of attractions. A massive Ferris wheel turned with agonizing slowness, its gondolas drifting through the air like fragile bubbles. Jake walked past booths draped in gossamer fabric, his heart beating slowly. The teddy bear perched on his shoulder, its glass eyes fixed forward. "This is the dream carnival," the bear whispered, its voice like dry leaves. "Here, happiness is soft and quiet." Jake reached out, catching a handful of passing cotton candy mist that dissolved into warmth against his palm. He moved toward the carousel, where painted horses hovered in mid-gallop, frozen in time. No music played, and even the wind held its breath. Jake sat on a lonely bench, his eyelids beginning to flutter with an irresistible weight. The bear nudged his arm. "Do not fight the heaviness." Jake's vision blurred into streaks of neon. "A dream inside a dream," he murmured. The lights dimmed, and the world slowed until even the wheels stood perfectly still. A giant Ferris wheel occupied the center of the abandoned carnival. It stood completely silent. No metal creaked, no gears ground against each other. Only rows of soft, pulsating lights traced its circular frame, casting long shadows across the empty fairgrounds. A worn teddy bear sat on the operator bench. It turned its head toward Jake and said, "This ride helps your mind slow down." Jake stepped into a glowing cabin. The door clicked shut with a finality that signaled the journey had begun. As the wheel began its slow rotation, the ground fell away. Jake looked out the window as the carnival transformed into a shifting dream world. Neon clouds drifted past the glass like slow-moving ghosts.
Golden stars orbited the wheel in a celestial dance. Soft lights pulsed in perfect rhythm with the machine.
Jake pressed his palm against the cold metal frame and whispered, "It feels like I am floating." The world below vanished into a sea of color. The higher the cabin rose, the deeper the silence grew. Jake rested his head against the seat. His breathing became slower, each inhale lasting longer than the last. His eyelids grew heavy. He let them close slowly, surrendering to the quiet drift of the night. The train shudders violently, brakes screaming against the rails before halting with a long, metallic hiss. Jake presses his face against the cold glass, staring at a platform glowing with a soft, pulsating silver light. The world he knew is gone, replaced by a haunting, lunar luminescence. He stumbles out, his boots sinking into a surface that feels like warm, shifting sand. Above, the sky is an abyss of ink, pierced by distant, unblinking stars. He turns back, but the train has already vanished into the shadows, leaving him stranded in the absolute silence of the void. The teddy bear at his side tilts its head, its glass eyes reflecting the silver glow. "Welcome to Moon Station," the toy says, its voice vibrating directly into Jake's chest. He takes a step forward. The ground beneath him ripples, sending rings of blue light spreading toward the horizon. Silence presses against his ears, heavy and absolute. He reaches down, sifting the glowing dust through his fingers. It drifts upward, defying gravity, floating like tiny embers in the thin, low-gravity air. The tension of his life dissolves into the pale mist. He whispers, "I feel like I am already dreaming." He lets go of the bear's hand and walks toward the crater's edge, where the earth hangs like a giant sapphire lantern in the dark. Jake adjusted his heavy suit as the Moon Station airlock hissed shut behind him, sealing away the last of the artificial air. He stepped onto the fine lunar dust, his flashlight beam cutting a lonely path through the eternal, suffocating shadow of the crater. Suddenly, the darkness broke. 100 meters ahead, a stream of liquid light poured from a floating rock. It was a waterfall, defying gravity, cascading into the void in a slow, rhythmic dance. The water glowed with a pulsing, soft blue hue that lit the silver dust. Beside him, the teddy bear tilted its head and whispered, "This is the sleep waterfall." A low-frequency hum vibrated through Jake's suit, a melody pulling at his very soul. He moved closer, his gloved hand hovering near the edge of the blue flow, releasing the heavy tension in his shoulders. The weight of the mission slipped away. His eyelids fluttered, then stayed closed as the rhythm drowned out the radio static. Jake slumped against the rock, his arms falling limp. He whispered, "I just want to rest." The blue glow enveloped him as he drifted into deep sleep. Jake clutched his teddy bear tighter as the bedroom walls faded into long, creeping shadows. A sudden cold draft rattled the window frame, but he did not flinch. The familiar hum of anxiety that usually filled his head vanished, replaced by a strange, heavy, and absolute silence. He stared at the teddy bear. Its button eyes caught the faint, silver moonlight. The bear tilted its head, its stitched mouth remaining perfectly still, yet a voice resonated clearly through the room.
"Dreams remove fear, Jake," the bear whispered. Jake took a deep breath and let his eyelids drop.
Behind his closed eyes, the landscape of his mind shifted. He saw the massive iron wheels of a train grinding against the tracks under a blanket of infinite stars. He saw the dark, empty hallways that used to make his heart race with terror.
Now, the train moved without a single sound, and those hallways led to open fields of lush,
green grass. He gripped the bear's worn fabric, his knuckles turning white. Then slowly, he relaxed his hold. The pressure in his chest dissolved, leaving his breathing steady and rhythmic. Jake opened his mouth, his voice barely audible. "I feel safe," he breathed. He shifted on the pillow, his body sinking into the mattress as the weight of the day slipped away, leaving his mind light. A giant Ferris wheel occupied the center of the abandoned carnival. It stood completely silent. No metal creaked, no gears ground against each other. Only rows of soft, pulsating lights traced its circular frame, casting long shadows across the empty fairgrounds. A worn teddy bear sat on the operator bench. It turned its head toward Jake and said, "This ride helps your mind slow down." Jake stepped into a glowing cabin. The door clicked shut with a finality that signaled the journey had begun. As the wheel began its slow rotation, the ground fell away. Jake looked out the window as the carnival transformed into a shifting dream world. Neon clouds drifted past the glass like slow-moving ghosts.
Golden stars orbited the wheel in a celestial dance. Soft lights pulsed in perfect rhythm with the machine.
Jake pressed his palm against the cold metal frame and whispered, "It feels like I am floating." The world below vanished into a sea of color. The higher the cabin rose, the deeper the silence grew. Jake rested his head against the seat. His breathing became slower, each inhale lasting longer than the last. His eyelids grew heavy. He let them close slowly, surrendering to the quiet drift of the night. Inside the dream control room, the soft amber lights shifted to a deep, pulsing violet. Jake stood at the console, his fingers hovering over the glowing dials, waiting for the subconscious to speak.
Suddenly, the screens erupted into vivid projections. A sunlit park appeared, where a younger Jake sprinted toward a wooden swing. Then, a crowded kitchen filled with the scent of fresh bread and the sound of overlapping laughter. The past was coming alive.
The teddy bear on the desk turned its glass eyes toward him and said, "These are your happy memories."
Around them, the air shimmered as golden bubbles detached from the screens, drifting lazily. Jake reached out, his hand passing through a bubble showing a birthday candle being blown out. The room filled with the echo of a distant song. He watched the bubbles collide and merge into a soft, ambient glow.
The sharp edge of his anxiety finally dulled. He whispered, "I did not know my memories were so beautiful." The violet light dimmed to a faint hum. Jake leaned against the wall, his eyelids fluttering as the heavy, rhythmic beat of the room slowed to a whisper, carrying him into a deep, peaceful rest. The dream train glided into the sleep preparation zone, its rhythmic clacking fading into a soft,
melodic hum. Jake stepped off the platform onto a floor that felt like compressed velvet.
Around him, glowing orbs of warm, amber light floated in the air, drifting like weightless bubbles.
A small teddy bear perched on a nearby bench and tilted its head with a knowing smile.
"This is the sleep preparation zone," it whispered softly. Jake sat on a floating cushion that adjusted instantly to his weight, supporting him in a cradle of pure comfort. A calm, rhythmic voice echoed from the walls. "Relax your body. Slow your breathing." Jake took a deep breath, watching the amber light pulse in sync with his chest. He inhaled slowly, counting to 4, then exhaled, feeling the tension leave his shoulders. His arms dropped to his sides, heavy and loose. He stretched his legs out, the muscles uncoiling like soft springs. The air grew thicker and cooler, smelling of distant pine and fresh rain. He watched the last few lights dim, turning the station into a deep, velvety indigo. His eyelids grew heavy, dropping shut as the train whistle blew one final, muffled note. The world outside the window dissolved into a soft blur. Sleep pulled him under, quiet and absolute. The dream train let out a low, rhythmic hum, its wheels spinning effortlessly against the velvet night sky. Jake pressed his palm against the cold glass, watching the nebula clouds drift away like colorful smoke. Outside, stars pulsed with a soft, steady rhythm, illuminating the vast, dark expanse of the universe. His teddy bear sat beside him, its stitched mouth unmoving, yet a voice echoed clearly in the cabin. "It is time to return home." Jake. He pulled his hand back from the window and settled deep into the seat, accepting the inevitable journey back. He watched the constellations blur into long, shimmering streaks of silver light. The train accelerated, diving headfirst into a swirling vortex of golden radiance that blinded the senses. The engine's vibrations smoothed into a gentle, haunting silence. In a sudden blink of an eye, the wooden cabin dissolved into millions of particles of light. Jake felt the cosmic energy fade as the dream world collapsed, pulling him through the fabric of space toward the waking world. Jake sat upright on his mattress in Chicago. The digital clock glowed in the dark. Outside, city lights flickered, but the room felt heavy with a newfound stillness. He pulled the blanket up, held by the weight of reality. Jake stared at the ceiling fan spinning rhythmically in the dark. Outside, the city hummed with the relentless pulse of traffic, but the sound felt miles away. He pulled his thin blanket up to his chin, his fingers gripping the fabric tight as he fought the restlessness of the night. He closed his eyes, blocking out the sliver of streetlight cutting across the room. In the growing silence, a new sound emerged. The rhythmic clicking of train tracks began to fill his mind, drowning out the city and carrying his thoughts toward a distant, shimmering horizon. The dream train pulled into a station made of pure starlight. The air tasted like cold mountain wind, crisp and clean.
He felt the familiar weight of his teddy bear against his shoulder. Then the bear spoke in a voice steady and low.
"You are safe. You can sleep now." Jake shifted, pressing his face into the pillow, feeling the tension finally leave his neck and shoulders. His heart rate slowed to match the steady, comforting pulse of the celestial train. The city faded into velvet blackness. He took a long, deep breath and let it out. His grip on the blanket loosened completely as his hand fell limp. The train whistle blew one final, distant note. Jake drifted into the quiet, sinking into a deep and dreamless sleep.